Hello, this video is on factoring greatest common factor. First, to review, dividing a polynomial by a monomial. Divide each term in the polynomial by the monomial in the denominator. So let's write each term in the numerator divided by the denominator and then simplify each fraction. 10 divided by 5 is 2. 2x squared plus 3x minus 4. Number 2. Again, let's write each term in the numerator divided by the denominator. And then simplify each fraction. 4 divided by 4 is 1. X cubed divided by x. Recall your exponent rules. When you are dividing, same base, keep the base and subtract the exponents. 3 minus 1 is 2. You could also think of this as x times x times x divided by x, where 1x in both the numerator and the denominator would divide out. So you are left with x squared in the numerator plus 6x minus 2. Number 3. Again, let's write each of the numerators over the denominator and simplify each fraction. (18) divided by 9 is 2. X to the 4th divided by x squared. 4 minus 2 is 2, so you get 2x squared plus x minus 1/3 minus 3 over x. Number 4, again, take each term in the numerator divided by the denominator and simplify each fraction. Eight twelfths simplifies into 2/3. X to the 4th divided by x squared is x squared. And continue to simplify each fraction. All right, let's move on to factor each polynomial using the greatest common factor and the distributive property in reverse. So example 1, 10x squared plus 15x minus 20. You want to look at the coefficients to find the greatest common factor. It is the largest number that divides into each number evenly. 10, 15, and 20. The greatest common factor is 5. And then one way to find the other factor is to do what we've done just above and divide each of those terms by 5, which is how we get 2x squared, 3x minus 4. Number 2, look at each term. Find the largest number that divides into all 3 coefficients evenly. That is 4. Next, check to see if they share a variable. If they share a variable, your greatest common factor will be the variable that they all share with the smallest exponent. So they all share an x. That is why the greatest common factor is 4x. And then divide each term by 4x. And the result will be what is in the parentheses. Example 3, 15x squared minus 5x. The largest number that divides into 15 and 5 evenly is 5. They both share the variable x. The greatest common factor will be the variable with the smallest exponent. So your greatest common factor is 5x. And divide each term by 5x. And the other factor will be what is in parentheses. You can always check these by using the distributive property and making sure that you get the original problem. You also want to make sure that the factor that is in parentheses does not have any common factors. If it does, that means you just did not factor out the greatest common factor. So you'll want to go back and correct that. So here are examples for us to practice. 20 and 12, what is the largest number that divides into 20 and 12 evenly? 4. They share a common variable x. The greatest common factor will be the one with the smallest exponent. And then divide each term by your greatest common factor. And that will give you the factor that is in parentheses. Number 2, the largest number that goes into 22 and 11 evenly is 11. They both share the variable x. Take out the one with the smallest exponent. Divide each term by your greatest common factor. And what you have left in parentheses is the other factor. Number 3, the greatest common factor is 9. They are all divisible by 9. They share the variable x. Take out the one with the smallest exponent and divide each term by your greatest common factor. And there you go. All right, we have some more to practice. Here's number 4. (12 and 24, the greatest common factor is 12. They share an x. The smallest exponent is x squared. They share a y. The smallest exponent is 3. Divide each term by your greatest common factor. Check it to make sure it's right. 12x squared y cubed times 2x will give you 24x cubed y cubed. And the same thing, if you multiply 12x squared y cubed times y, you will get 12x squared y to the 4th. Number 5, your coefficients are 5 and 10. The greatest common factor would be 5. They share an x. The one with the smallest exponent is 2. They share a y. The smallest exponent is 1. They share a z. The smallest exponent is 1. So the other factor will be z cubed plus 2x to the 4th y cubed. Number 6, 32, 16, and 24. The largest number that they are divisible by is 8. They all share the variable x. The one with the smallest exponent is 1, so your greatest common factor is 8x. Divide each term by 8x. All right, number 7. The greatest common factor is b. And if you factor out a b, you have a minus c. we're going to apply this same concept to number 8. Number 8, the greatest common factor is x minus 2, and the other factor is x minus 3. Number 7 and number 8 are very, very similar, where A is x, B is x minus 2, C is 3, and B is x minus 2, because they share the common factor of x minus 2. So 7 and 8 are very, very similar, where in 7 you just have B, but in 8 that factor is a binomial x minus 2. Number 9, same concept. They share the factor 3x minus 1, and the other factor would be x squared plus 4. The order of the factors does not matter. If you prefer, you can go x squared plus 4 times 3x minus 1. Let's go ahead and move forward and look at factoring 4-term polynomials using grouping. So you can see in the first example, we have 4 terms. They do not have a greatest common factor. They do not share a number that will divide into all of them evenly, and they do not have a common variable that they all share. So when you have 4 terms, the technique for factoring is going to be factoring by grouping. We will group the first 2 factors, or first 2 terms together, and then the second 2 terms together. Factor the greatest common factor from each set of parentheses. And then it will look just like the problems above, so that we will have a common factor of x minus 9, and the other factor will be x squared plus 3. So number 1, we look for a greatest common factor. We see that we have 4 terms, so we will factor by grouping. The greatest common factor is x squared. The greatest common factor in the second pair is 3. Now the greatest common factor is x plus 8, and the other factor is x squared plus 3. Number 2, they don't have a greatest common factor. There are 4 terms, so we will factor by grouping. We will group the first 2. You will notice that this is a negative 2x. We need to make this a plus and attach the negative to the 2x. We'll now look at our greatest common factor for each set. So we have 9x squared. When your leading coefficient is negative, in this case it's a negative 2, we will factor out a negative 2 and the other factor is x minus 2. Double check, multiply this back together. Negative 2 times x is negative 2x, and negative 2 times negative 2 is a positive 4. So this will factor into x minus 2 and 9x squared minus 2. And just to reiterate, it doesn't matter the order of these 2 parentheses, these 2 factors. Number 3, we have 4 terms. They don't share a common factor, so we will factor by grouping. Greatest common factor is y. Greatest common factor is Z. So our factors are x minus 4 and y plus z. Number 4, we have 4 factors. We're looking for a greatest common factor. They don't have one. We have 4 terms, so we will factor by grouping. We will group the first 2, attach the negative inside the parentheses to that 5, make the negative sign on the outside a plus sign, take out the greatest common factor. The leading coefficient is -5, so we're going to factor out a negative. And in this case, 5 is the greatest common factor, so we'll factor out a -5. Use the distributive property to make sure that you get the original, and we do. Our greatest common factor is now x plus 6, and the other factor is x squared minus 5. So now what you should do is pause the video, and you have a practice page here. Work these out and then come back and check your answers. There's actually 8 on this practice page. So pause the video and come back and check your answers. Here are the answers to the practice problems. Number 1, 2x squared plus x minus 3. Number 2, 2x plus 1 minus 1 over 2x. Be sure that x is in the denominator. Number 3, 3x squared over 2 plus 2x minus 1. Number 4, 3x times x minus 2. Number 5, x cubed y to the 4th is the greatest common factor. Number 6, the greatest common factor is 5. Number 7, we have 4 terms where we will factor by grouping. And number 8, again, I want to make sure that you attach that negative inside the parentheses. And there we have it. Great job on greatest common factor.